Hello, and welcome to HigherEdLive. It is Thursday, May 11th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. I am your host, Amy Jorgensen. On today's live broadcast, we'll be talking about Snapchat and Instagram stories. Marketing Live is part of a HigherEdLive network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our broadcast by sharing your knowledge. Participate in today's discussion by tweeting us using hashtag HigherEdLive. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com. Or take HigherEdLive with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast. HigherEdLive is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, digital content, design, and more. I'd like to welcome our guests today. We have Jamie Gooden, Digital Engagement Manager for Washington and Lee University. Welcome, Jamie.
Howdy.
We have Kelly Kaufman, Social Media Associate for the University of Virginia. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi.
And we have Nikki Sundstrom, Director of Social Media for the University of Michigan. Welcome, Nikki.
Hello, everyone.
So let's just dive right into it. And again, for everyone watching, do not hesitate to ask questions using hashtag HigherEdLive, and I'll do my best to try to filter them to the group as they come in. So let's start off with, what would you define the difference between a story and a regular post is? Who wants to jump on that, Kelly?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the difference is, a post can be, a link to outward facing from like going from your Facebook page maybe to your own content. So it's really sharing your own content, where a story would be like the content itself. So it's a way that can be a little bit more casual than a blog post, a little bit more personal than just a video, and I just think it's something that kind of connects slightly different than just a regular social post.
Also, I feel like time is an element in stories, so you can actually feel as though you're traveling with that person throughout the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd say perspective is the differentiating point in a story. A story really is meant to be more personal and all-encompassing, to translate the feel that you're trying to express in what's happening. A lot of the stories we see are behind the scenes or are live in the moment. They may be something that's going to be expiring soon that we want people to witness, where content really lives forever, and it's something that we're curating forth for a duration of our communities.
Excellent, thank you. So let's dive into Snapchat. Why do you feel like Snapchat is an important platform? I know at this point everyone should be on Snapchat, but it's something I think we should reiterate why we should be on there.
So I'll jump in first, since U of M was the first major university to join Snapchat. Seems like that's appropriate. And we've been on it, I think, for the longest amount of time. So we still find it relevant, which I think a lot of people find interesting, even in the midst of other platforms creating stories, Instagram, Facebook, everyone else. And it's because of the type of audience that we've built there and the age demographic. So stories in that ephemeral nature, until, of course, limitless snaps launched this week. Now we've got a whole new thing to deal with. Is still unique to that community and the way in which they consume data. The story element, all of the things that I already just touched on, is so different from any other experience that they get in a news feed that we still find that very, very valuable.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I even know the anecdote I probably share the most about why we use Snapchat is I was visiting the student workers in our music department, and I was talking about how we use Snapchat and how we can work with the music department. And they just told me, they're like, yeah, that's how I talk to my friends. Like, that's how I message them. That's how I send things. That's how I update about what I'm doing, is that's where the conversation is. Their day-to-day life, whether it's a photo or even just the chat function within Snapchat, that I found that not only current students are very into sending us snaps if we ask them questions, but also prospective students wanting to see what it's like to be there for more of like a student perspective rather than just the marketing materials they get like sent to their house.
I think it's really come to popularity because it's, in my mind, like the perfect manifestation of how a smartphone is used and what it can be at any given moment. It is so fluid and easy and real and convenient that it's pretty undeniable that it almost had to happen.
Totally.
Wonderful, thanks. So let's start off with the simple stuff. Can you please explain what a Snapchat story is and how that differs from some of the other options within Snapchat?
I'll go ahead and start. Basically, a story, as opposed to how I try to explain it, especially to people in our office, is that one snap is just something that you can just send to people, but your snap story is for your followers. So you can see what their day is like. And that consists of multiple snaps, which include photos and videos. And it's more of a compilation. So when I mean story, you really have to think about it like a story with a beginning to end. So usually when we try to approach creating stories, you have to think of how we start and how we're going to finish it. So if it's an event, it's throughout the day of the event. And each snap's about 10 seconds long. That's like the max. So, and then that is a compilation of all your snaps.
Excellent.
So I'll actually expand upon that because Kelly's exactly right. When you are trying, especially if you're doing a takeover within your organization, and really get people to understand what happens or needs to happen for a story, we actually created a storyboard document that will help people lay out each individual snap. And I'll go ahead and I'll tweet it here so that everybody else can access it.
Wonderful. Thanks. All right, great. So let's dive into starting off at the very beginning. Whenever you're developing any type of marketing content, what are your goals when you're developing Snapchat story content? How do you set those goals? What do you think, Jamie?
Our goals at WNL are typically awareness, which we measure in terms of story views and screen captures and stuff like that. We try to spread the gamut between like pure information, like this event is happening at.
Oh, I think it went quiet for a second.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we can hear him.
All right, we're going to jump into Kelly real quick. So how are you identifying some of your goals?
Yeah, so we have general goals in our communications office, and we kind of see our platforms as an extension of those communication goals. So when we're compiling it, it's a lot about who our audience is specifically for Snapchat. For us, it's prospective students, current students, and younger alums. And the way we kind of target that is, what are they looking for? They're looking for something that's different from and separate from our other content that we're posting. So if it's finals, we say, like, what's your final survival tips that they can send to us? Or if it's during break, we want to show the of experiences that people are having at UVA or outside of UVA. So a lot of it is really just thinking what our audience wants and how that can meet up with our institutional goals of being able to really show the experience of UVA and what it's like to be here on grounds, even if they're not here or if they are here.
Excellent. And Jamie, is your microphone working again?
I don't know, is it?
Yes.
Cool.
I'm sorry. So continue your thought.
Basically, we try to get a good mix of like healthy information and fun information. So healthy information would be, this event is happening at this time at this place, go check it out. And then the funner information would be just at a coffee shop in town, or maybe at that event later that afternoon or evening. All of that sharing the same goal of just awareness and kind of letting people know that stuff is happening and what it's like to be a student. Really, what Kelly said.
Thank you. And so, Nikki, how are you developing your goals when you're creating Snapchat content?
Yeah, I think it's unique to the event or the organization that's approached us. So we currently have thematic days that are built out through our calendar year. We just wrapped up 52 weeks worth of Tuesday takeovers by our Michigan Medicine organization, where a different student within Michigan Medicine, a resident, would take over and kind of show us the behind the scenes of what they're learning. On Fridays, we work with arts and culture. The Ann Arbor community is really deeply rooted in the art scene. And so we make sure to tell our community members what's going to be happening in the area this weekend, as well as showing behind the scenes to our many museums on campus or new installations that might be happening. And the goals to those stories are each unique. What does the museum want to see? Do they just want to see extra people view the story, or do they actually want to see attendees and find out if they came from Snapchat? Sometimes we do really unique stories based in public safety and security, whether or not it's a drinking safety PSA, sexual assault awareness, or even run, hide, fight, right? Gun violence on campus. And then we'll download those stories and put them onto YouTube to get additional metrics associated with them to see just what the saturation point is.
Excellent. So how are you developing Snapchat story content so that it best engages with your students? Nikki, we'll jump back in with you.
Oh boy. Okay. So I think those three elements that I just sort of described are really kind of the root of our strategy in that arena. We want to look at how the data is consumed. How far did they make it through a story? Do we need to adjust the amount of snaps that are present in a story? You know, is 20 too many? Yes, it is. And then how can we dial that back? Do they screenshot a certain type of snap more? Usually when we can get our football coach present in a snap, or maybe if a very prominent music artist comes to campus, or we put a link in a story, those types of things that we want to see how they capture that data. Do we get a lot of questions asked? We've partnered with admissions, usually in the summer, with our incoming freshmen to have live Q&As. You know, can you have a dog in your dorm room? And then we can curate that story back out and give them answers. And they really love to see their self be featured, or, you know, submit us different drawings. All of those things help us shape our future content going forward.
Thank you. Kelly?
I always found one of the most valuable things is, and I think Jamie would attest to this too, is having a student worker in our office, is being able to tell us exactly what's happening on grounds, that feels like, oh, I'm going to be at this event, or what's going on right now. You know, I'll sometimes be like, oh, can we do the Snapchat this day? And he's like, well, people might not be watching, you know, just having that kind of real life person there kind of on the grounds. Like we do the kind of man on the street, like, how are you enjoying springtime? And he can go interview, and it feels a little bit more natural because then we'll have someone who is a student who can kind of give their perspective. And then also on top of that, you know, like Nikki was saying, the takeovers have been especially important, be able to do Q&As and just seeing what is popular with students. We found that, you know, I have the application rate for a Snapchat takeover is, you know, more than I can handle. Sometimes it feels like, but it really responds to what they like, what they're doing, and then being able to really hear what the students like and what, you know, perspectives would like, and being able to read even just the chats, like even some anecdotal evidence is also helpful in addition to the numbers I found, because being able to have a prospective student to tell you, oh, wow, I was so glad, you know, I watched this whole thing, I loved it, really helps us inform our content and how that reinforces whether we're doing something right or not. That always helps.
And that social listening is so important, because otherwise you're not talking at them, you're talking with them, and you're giving them exactly what they want. Otherwise, you know, why pay attention?
Exactly.
Jamie, how are you developing some of your content to engage people?
So as Kelly alluded to, we have a team of students that are each assigned to a different beat of student life. So there's a couple of art students, there's community engagement folks, campus rec and varsity sports and clubs and all of that. And each student has a day of the week where he or she is responsible for just populating the Snapchat story. I mean, anybody can pop on whenever, but that person is really driving it, and it is a reflection of whatever their beat is or whatever their life is. And I like to keep it relatively serendipitous. Us WNL being a really small school, 1,600. I love data, but I am very aware of its limits. So the anecdotal, okay, a student agrees this is cool, let them go with it. I try to be pretty trusting in that regard.
How do you manage everyone having access to the account? Because I've seen, and this was a while ago that I tried to do this, but I couldn't have multiple accounts for Snapchat on my phone. I can only have one.
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
It's really annoying.
Okay.
You can't have more than one person logged in.
Yeah.
We use Slack as our communications tool. We have a channel called I'm on Snapchat right now. And before anyone hops on, they let us know.
We use Slack as well.
Yeah.
All right, great. So the next thing, so what have you found doesn't work on Snapchat? So I think Kelly talked about it a little bit when she does a lot of the social listening. Can you address what doesn't work? What should we make sure we avoid?
Making sure that what your messaging is relevant to the people. So, you know, especially with some of the content we post on UVA Today, some of it is not going to be as engaging. So, you know, it really depends. I really try to do more event-based things. If you're just kind of more telling someone or just talking at someone, like you kind of mentioned, Amy, is that that doesn't really work. And I've had some snaps that I'm just like, this didn't really work. Maybe kind of, even if it's just like, oh, we're going to the library inside doing a tour, maybe that doesn't work. But maybe instead you should be like, how are you studying at the library? Of kind of maybe doing that kind of difference. Usually if you try to make it more alumni based, it like you kind of have a slighter drop off for us.
So it's like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. If you're trying too hard to be cool, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really glad you got that reference. I was worried for a second. I'm like, maybe this movie's too old. And
it's the perfect generational hit right now.
Wonderful.
So, one challenge I've had is, so one of our experiments with Snapchat was kind of going through the main building on our campus and taking just quick little snaps of just the flyers of events that are happening that week. Because one of our institutional goals is to really drive attendance to those events. And as we're doing it, it feels lame. It's not like fun or exciting or anything. We've had a few students say, hey, we didn't like that, blah, blah, blah. But it gets stats-wise, it gets the most screenshots, the most views consistently. So I'm really torn between kind of the data and the anecdotes being at odds. So it's kind of a lot of experimentation is the route we take.
It's like people saying they don't want emails, but that's how they respond to things, and that's why they go to things, because they got a reminder.
That's a consistent, I think, anecdote across any platform with any content, right? Because you're talking to such a skewed and wide variety of demographics that everyone wants to consume their data differently. We consistently will hear from students that they don't leverage Facebook, but the first thing that they want us to create is a Facebook group. Right, so it's the same thing with stories. You have to continue that variety, but then both appease the consumers and your institution who's paying your bills and allowing you to actually work on this type of content.
Exactly.
Thank you. So let's dive into some of the analytics. What are the best ways to pull analytics for Snapchat so that way you're able to illustrate that you were able to accomplish your goals? Well,
I would say Snapchat analytics is probably the most archaic thing if you compare it to every other social media account. That you can look it up. There's a couple new services now, but I don't know how trustworthy they are currently. So literally, not only does the story disappear in 24 hours, so does the analytics, which is probably the hardest thing for me. Is that you have to get within there for 24 hours, and what we measure is end of the story, the last open screenshots, and the views of the rest in between. And also, for anyone who doesn't know, there's no follower count on Snapchat, so you don't really know how many followers you have. There's some metrics that you can gauge, but that's usually how we gauge them.
Thank you.
So we were very fortunate as early adopters to have a pretty good relationship with Snapchat for the first 2 years of our account before they decided to focus on that IPO. And can only tell you that August of a year ago, we had over 14,000 followers, which was fantastic. But as Kelly just said, now you get nothing, which is really very frustrating. And the best thing that you can do is everything that Kelly just described. Really look at the saturation, the content consumption, and the overall kind of value of the stories that you put out. And then the one thing that we also do is download every single story, upload it into a YouTube playlist with our branding, so that we can curate those stories for other higher ed institutions to utilize. And then other people, we started it, of course, because people didn't generally understand what we were even doing on Snapchat. And that gave us the ability to say, here's this video. This is the type of stories that we're telling. And they're not, what you would normally anticipate.
Thank you.
Jamie. One thing I would add is I do the same thing, and I check it every day at the same time, right? The first thing I do when I get to work is to make sure that it's just part of the routine.
Yeah, that sounds good. Have a timer if you need to know when it expires. I have it on my phone. But there's been some news that Hootsuite acquired someone who does Snapchat analytics, but there's nothing yet. So I think we're all crossing our fingers for that one.
Great. Well, I think this is a perfect time for our transition over to Instagram stories. So VentureBeat reported yesterday on May 10th that Snapchat has 166 million daily users, which is 34 million fewer viewers than Instagram stories, even though I think that launched just within the last year. And so we have a question from Jocelyn on Twitter that says, how do you use Instagram stories differently than Snapchat stories?
Yeah, I think that's one of the kind of interesting challenges because it functions the same way as Snapchat. There is a couple different features that it does use. You know, you can have your location, and if you're a verified user, you can actually link out to a post, which you can't do on Snapchat. So when I look at like Snapchat versus Instagram stories, I try to make the Instagram stories maybe a little bit more academically minded or more of the culture and groups that we have, because we have a bigger following on Instagram from what I've been able to gather. So that's going to be a lot, you know, older alums, that's still going to be current students, but it's going to skew slightly older. So we kind of want to have a mix of what, you know, CIOs are doing on grounds, but we also want to have maybe something a little bit more academically minded, where Snapchat might be more student-based, like point of view kind of content.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. I mean, when you think about the longevity of your platforms, we've all been focusing on Instagram for a much longer time than something like Snapchat. So obviously your age demographic has grown with you, and your numbers right out of the gate, if you want to impress, are going to be 2 to 3 times higher than what you're going to get on a Snapchat story. And at the end of the day, you can actually access those analytics and you know how many followers you have. So that always makes the data easier as well. But the consumption patterns are what's different. A lot of what I've also seen, just, you know, having youth that leverage both of these platforms in my own home, is that in the beginning, most of what you saw on Instagram stories was, like Kelly, I think you'd shared earlier about Facebook stories. It was, hey, follow me on Snapchat. I'm not going to put anything here except I know how to use this tool. So please go here where my mom's not going to see it, where my grandma and everyone else is not going to see it.
Exactly.
But the location-based features, I think, is what is enticing people now back into Instagram stories. They're a little bit different than the filters that you get. You know, everybody, hopefully, Lord help us, is done with that puppy dog filter. And, you know, right? It's go away now. But on Instagram,
never done.
It's something completely different. They're going to show you that, hey, I'm at this cool museum and here's my zip code and I can do a boomerang right in my story. And people adore boomerangs, right? They love that. I'm going to do a cartwheel and I'm going to show it to you over and over again thing. So the age demographic that's leveraging those types of tools are going to navigate towards Instagram stories just for that. And then they're going to go back to Snapchat for something totally different, so that they can get the latest lens or whatever else is happening there.
Totally.
So would you say that Instagram is a little bit more professional and that Snapchat's a little bit more silly?
Now, I wouldn't call it the LinkedIn of stories. But I do feel that it's an older type of person, and granted, when I'm saying older, I'm saying young alum to like 30,
exactly,
right? That's the old people at the table, and they're the ones that are going to look at Instagram stories. Now, I do still see people create more stories in Snapchat than they create on Instagram, but it's a quick way to consume the data when you can scroll through Instagram. I'd like to see a wider variety of users want to tell stories on Instagram, and I still think we're waiting to see that happen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to, sorry, Jamie. I think the best word to use is that Instagram stories are more polished, like people do with their Instagrams themselves, where it's very branded, and a lot of people who are brands on Instagram use it kind of more as an extension of that. So it's definitely more polished, and that's how the boomerang comes in. That's how the filters that are a little bit better than Snapchat, like filters, just how it looks. And that's how I would kind of say the difference of it is that you really have to take a little bit more care with each Instagram story that you have, as opposed to Snapchat is a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more casual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that for us a difference is Snapchat is kind of a very, very often type thing where it loses its novelty. So we use Instagram as the rare, okay, y'all, this is special, you better check it out type content. So for example, at our parents' weekend in the last fall, we had the parents of our student social media team own the Instagram story for Parents Weekend. And it turned out awesome. But we use it really sparingly for emphasis at this point.
Yeah, what a fun idea. And this filters that you guys are talking about, my absolute favorite one I think I've ever seen was 2 days ago or 3 days ago, they had a foot. That your face became a foot. And I'm like, why is that a thing? But I thought it was hilarious. And my family just thought I was weird. But I thought it was hilarious.
I'm still a big fan of last year's Taco Bell filter when you could become for Cinco de Mayo an actual taco. And I don't know if anybody else saw the stats on that, but they said that filter in one day generated 12 years worth of business. Like typically what they would anticipate adjusted advertising campaign.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's amazing. All right, so jumping more into Instagram. So what are your goals in developing Instagram stories versus just regular Instagram posts? And how does that differ from what you do on Snapchat?
Well, I think I kind of, it's kind of strange. I kind of put Snapchat and Instagram stories in its own bucket and then Instagram separate as its own post. And I try to make them different enough so that if you're posting on Instagram and also posting an Instagram story the same day, that they're still different in content. Because I think, someone might see your photo and then might also want to see what's going on. But I still use Instagram stories a little bit more sparingly, depending, like Jamie says, like there's something big going on or if there's a huge event. So that's usually how I kind of create them. But I kind of keep that more in the brainstorm for like Snapchat and Instagram to see how we can break off those two.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Instagram stories for us at this point is kind of like the holdover, like, oh crap, Snapchat's already booked. You can have Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And most people are happy with that because they're going to get the higher analytics numbers anyways. And some people really gravitate towards it naturally because of those more polished features, right? Like they don't want to be the student intern in the pit at the concert that's, Snapchatting away.
Yeah.
They want the Instagram story where they can talk about more advanced research or talk to that older demographic that's on Instagram. So that's kind of how we plan it out.
Totally.
Jamie.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Kelly said, our Instagram stories are almost totally separate from the Instagrams themselves. So it's really just almost supplemental. Like the students I've been talking with just haven't hopped on board the Instagram stories yet. So I'm going to let them leave that. So it's still, of the three being Snapchat, Instagram regular, and Instagram stories are 9 times out of 10 the last one we add.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, you address this a little bit, but let's kind of explain it out for folks that may not know. So when you're developing Instagram story content, how are you using that to engage with students? Can you address perhaps hashtags you may have used or explain what Boomerang is and how you're using it so that it is effective?
So we've done a couple of different things with our Instagram stories, and because you can provide links, that's kind of an opportunity that you don't get in Snapchat. So we'll use Instagram stories to preview events that are happening on campus, telling people that they should attend or gravitate to that or that it's coming, where our Snapchat story would be live from the event, come get the feel because you couldn't be here. So that's one of the ways that we're doing that to engage current students. And then other ways, I think, is, again, by default, covering different things that are happening on campus because other networks are taken.
So are you using any hashtags to be able to connect with folks?
Not that are unique to the stories. So we have that discussion of strategically leveraging hashtags far in advance and have a set of hashtags that we use continuously around campus for given topics or areas or types of events that are happening. So for example, whenever we live tweet anything, we use hashtag UMishTalks. It can be used both by the main accounts or any of our accounts across campus know that if they're live tweeting something, they should use that as well. And so we'll use that in Instagram if it pertains to something that's going to be taking place.
Thanks. Kelly.
Yeah, I think that, I would say we use hashtags in a similar way where it's more of a branded hashtag that you can use across platforms. So, we have final exercises coming up, so we'd use hashtag UVA grad. So maybe an Instagram story would even be a way to like share your favorite grad photos or you in your cap and gown using UVA grad. And that's how you'd be able to have user-generated content in that way. But in order to attract students, you know, we want to have a diversity of groups and events that are kind of happening on grounds. We also have our student worker who does a man on the street kind of ask a question, and then you have people who are just hanging out on the lawn. And especially if it's a beautiful day, I was like, go take pictures of the lawn, get the rotunda, you know, and then he's really good at doing that, where you can get beautiful photos. That's kind of what people want to see, while asking kind of a simple question. So that could be an easy way to just kind of see what students are up to currently, and then they can respond. So that happens a lot when people do that. You'll see people responding to, like, if they see their friend, they're like, oh my God. So that's another way we can reach out to students and just see, you know, we're kind of connecting with the student experience, like with actual students.
So are you reposting a student, like the user-generated content, are you reposting that as your story?
No, we'll like actually go, well, user-generated content, I meant more of, you know, if we're trying to promote a hashtag, if like through Instagram, then that's an easy way to kind of promote that through user-generated content. But but the one other advantage of Instagram stories is that you can put in photos that you can get sent or you take that don't have that kind of shortened image that Snapchat does. So you can easily integrate it into your Instagram story. So having user-generated content could also be an advantage with Instagram stories.
Thank you.
Well, that's interesting too. So the memories feature, Kelly, that you just kind of, you know, referenced. So that changed again last week as well. So now there is no white border on photos. So I think a lot of us probably are going to be revisiting how we craft our stories, because, you know, clear back in the day, right, when we would do user-generated content stories 2 years ago, we would print photos, right? You'd snap us, we'd screenshot it, we'd print it on 8.5 by 11. This, I feel so old right now. And then we would like lay it on the table and we'd take pictures across the entire table. We don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so the ability to look more like a expensive brand that can make the investments in Snapchat that they've been doing sort of behind the scenes for a while is now available to us. And I think you're going to see stories grow because of that and get even more fancy.
And I've seen social media, exactly what you said. Instead of printing it out, they were taking pictures on top of phones.
Yep.
Like, how do I get this? Oh, there's a light, you know, coming in. It's not
well,
working.
And you can always tell when somebody took a picture of their computer screen because it had the little waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie. So how are you developing some of your content to make sure that you're most engaging with students, like hashtags and?
For us, I think the best content we produce is actually like short vlog pieces. Mm-hmm. We use a lot of our other channels to push people there. So one advantage of Instagram stories is the linking component. We can kind of feature, like, so in our town, there's like 2 coffee shops that are kind of rivals. We did a breakdown of that situation and everyone loved it. So we use Instagram to like push people to that kind of stuff that really the students love to write, and it's the most resource intensive. So we want to get our bang for our buck there.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thank you. So what have you found does not work well on Instagram? Like, what have you tried that, like, it's okay because you got to try things and fail. So what have you tried that has not worked well, Kelly?
Well, you know, sometimes we try doing like an Instagram story takeover, and that is kind of, it works better because you can be logged in while someone's doing it. So I didn't have a problem with that per se, but for Instagram has like a weird password change where you'd have to change it every time you change your password. So that one's a little bit hard to manage than doing a Snapchat takeover personally. I just think that's a little bit more organic, and then it didn't work poorly, but I just thought maybe a Snapchat story would be better because I think it's still something that all students don't use. So I think that was a test that, you know, might have been better on Snapchat.
Thank you. Jamie?
For us, I think the thing I've learned is you can't expect students to do Snapchat stories and Instagram stories in the same day or really in the same mindset. It's kind of an either-or situation. So we're hoping that both would happen at any given time of the week was kind of wishful thinking, I believe. So that's why we reverted to Snapchat being the default, Instagram being the special.
Thank you. And Nikki, what do you find when you've developed stuff and it just didn't work? So what didn't work for you?
Oh, I think the interpretation of what doesn't work is different for everyone. We've been fortunate that nothing has really tanked completely, but everybody, and this is the hard thing about Snapchat in particular, is that you can't tell the type of user that has consumed that story. So, it may not get as many views. And like Jamie was saying earlier, right, it may be when you walked through campus and took pictures of those posters, but they got screenshot. And the things that might be wildly popular, when you do get that football coach, at the end of the day, is that story really something that has a longer shelf life? Probably not, right? It was more of a real ephemeral, feel-good kind of story. So we don't gauge anything really as a failure, just as a learning opportunity. And should we do more of it, or should we do less of it, or should we adjust it into something else?
That makes sense. We have a question from Nikita. What was the platform used for the Snapchat takeover?
What do you mean, what platform? Sorry.
It just says what platform was used for the Snapchat takeover, which I think is a good question, because I mean, do you have one phone that has your Snapchat on it that you let different people use, or because we addressed before that you'd have to log in and out and get all that scheduled?
Right. Well, for us, what we do is we let the students use their own phones, and we change the password. We let them log in. And then they're able to do the takeover, because if not, you come in the same situation if you're having to screenshot and keep on uploading. So, and then we have very, very strict guidelines and a cutoff time for when they need to sign off by. So I generally have them use their phones, because if not, the coordination of having our own separate phone, and they're kind of more comfortable using their own.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I found that you have to make it as easy as possible for the students to create the content. They don't want to have to think about it. It has to be totally natural. So same here. Everybody has their own phone. We just try to roll the punches there.
Thank you. Nikki, have you guys done any takeovers or had different departments use?
We do lots of takeovers. So during the school year, we publish a Snap story pretty much every day, or at least pretty darn close to. And so, like I discussed earlier, we have those thematic days built in where we know that, for example, why I went silent there for a second. Apparently I missed another phone call, but our Michigan Medicine social primary, right? He's the one that schedules those Tuesdays. So I know that Rich has got it. And he has the opportunity to work with our team then to share passwords and do the password changing of the guard. It's a complicated process, but it's one that's necessary that we all sort of do. We don't share technology at this point. It'd be hard to have that like one phone in the office, although we have talked about it, right? But we continuously kind of like our camera in the office or our Snapchat spectacles. You're in Slack like, who's got the tech? I need to borrow it. And somebody took it back to their dorm room. And it's just a total pain in the tail. So we do a lot of password sharing and password changing.
Yeah.
What are Snapchat spectacles?
What?
Ooh. You don't know?
I'm not cool. I wanted to be cool. I got the Mean Girls put in, then I was cool, and now I'm not cool.
Hold on. Let me go grab them.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't want to spoil it now, because you have to see them as they are.
Is it like the virtual reality thing where you just like wear them and you can see that person's perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, it's more like you can Snapchat like through glasses.
Oh,
right.
So it's like the Google glasses?
I want to wait for the reveal.
I just have not seen this technology yet.
Oh, watch out.
Oh, so that's really cool.
So these are spectacles. They actually have cameras in the lenses on the outer banks here. They shoot video in a circular format. So if you've seen that anywhere on Snapchat, and they allow you to give your first person POV to your Snapchat consumers, right? You can actually interchange the lenses. So I've seen people turn them into their actual glasses for day-to-day consumption and use. But we purchased 2 pair, and we were fortunate enough to have a Snapbot, the Snapbots that kept landing in random locations. Go figure. The guy that created spectacles for Snapchat is actually an alum. So we had spectacles here at a Michigan Athletics location, and we purchased a pair both for our office and then for people across office to utilize for takeovers specifically.
How much are they?
You can actually buy them online now, and look, they're charging. So the case is actually a charger. You can see the little camera here, which lights up when they're on. They were $100, I believe, a piece. I'm trying to recall. Maybe 100, maybe 199, something about that.
So is that something that's going to be like the selfie stick, and like after 6 months it's no longer cool, or is this something that because you're seeing it from the person's perspective that it's going to maintain its cool factor longer?
You know, it's interesting and kind of hard to say. Spectacles have been around for, gosh, almost a year, I want to say, maybe not that long. And because Snap Inc. Now bills themselves as a camera company, this is, you know, one of those features. I think we'll see a wide variety of tools that they're going to continue to release. So yeah, it could be compared to a selfie stick, only now you don't have to hold your arm awkwardly up. You just put on glasses like any other person might have.
I think one important difference between these and the selfie stick is the price point.
Yeah.
So like these haven't reached that huge critical mass yet just because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very smart. So what other tools do you have before we close off that I don't know about, because apparently I'm out of date? I'm okay with that. So what other tools are, so we got the glasses, and you said there was a Snap Bot. What is that?
So the Snap Bot was how you would get the spectacles. They were only, when they originally did the release, these lovely yellow, we have an entire blog post, I'll share that too. In a video about when spectacles were here. So they were essentially a vending machine where you could purchase the spectacles. And for the first, well, I'd say only until about a month ago could you actually buy them online. So the only way you could get spectacles were from the Snapbot that would just magically appear in popular locations. I believe the one that was in New York for a couple of weeks was the one that was in any place the longest. Usually it's about 24 hours. And the lines I heard, I think Digital Tech or somebody did an article, it was like 5 to 6 hours people were waiting for these spectacles, right?
Yeah.
Because all the tech nerds, we really had to have them. We'll see how long they stick around. Again, I think with Snapchat in particular, these will be cool. They'll be something that you have to have, and then we're going to see something else out of them that we'll all need to get, whether or not, I know they were in discussions to purchase actual camera companies, right? Polaroid, I think, was tossed around for a bit. So if we see another tool come from them that allows you to actually take digital photos and then put it into your Snapchat, I would not be surprised.
Yeah,
that is so cool. Well, thank you. I think those are all of our, the last one. What is the best way to pull analytics for Instagram stories? Let's jump in with Jamie.
That is a good question. As I mentioned earlier before we actually started this, I've been, as a social media manager, taking a break from social media. So I'm not confident that what I'm about to say is right. It's been a couple of weeks, so maybe somebody else should hop on that one.
Kelly.
Well, they have them. So one of the good things that we were kind of talking about is that your story does get saved in a kind of analytics section of your Instagram if you're a business account. So make sure you're switched to your business account so you can look at all your analytics. So it has the views. It doesn't have all the analytics, so I would still try to screenshot them maybe the first couple times just to compare the two before they disappear. It has views. I think it has the impressions, soft analytic, and then I think the reach as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Nikki, what are you using for the analytics?
Same thing, in platform. Right now it is pretty much what we're using. Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us today. You all gave me a bunch of information and a bunch of cool new things that I get to put on my birthday list of I get to get the cool glasses. That's awesome.
Right.
Athletics has it. So Amy, if you need to test it out.
They're like right down the office from me. I'm going to be going over there like, I need to borrow some glasses. Can I wear them with my regular glasses, or is that just going to be way too, it's like when you go to a movie theater. I don't know. Right. It's not working. All right. Well, I'd like to also thank you to our program sponsor, M. Stoner, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us, Amy.
Thank you.
Take care.